Welcome to Have You Heard with Heather Darling. I'm Heather Darling, and today's guest is Chuck Aaron. Chuck is the CEO and president of Jersey Girl Brewing and the former vice president of the New Jersey Brewers Association. Jersey Girl was founded in November of 2014 and opened in 2016. Chuck has a lengthy background in business development and is also a member of the Mount Olive Township Council. His community involvement included serving as president of the Mount Olive Area Chamber of Commerce, vice president of the Morris County 200 Club, and Chuck received his MBA from NJIT and his bachelor's from my alma mater, Seton Hall University. Welcome to the show, Chuck.
Heather, thank you for having me.
So Governor Murphy has been proposing alcohol reform initiatives, and New Jersey's current liquor laws have really been in place for nearly a century. What's the impetus behind this change?
It's a great question, Heather. This is one of the major topics you think about from the governor's state of the state, and it's got attention from folks in Trenton, including those in the state alcohol retailing, distribution industries, and local manufacturing, like the breweries or distilleries in New Jersey. So if you think about what the governor's trying to accomplish, Governor Murphy said that he's trying to make, not just modern, but fair. So he's trying to create a world in which all these license holders can coexist in a beneficial way for not only the individual businesses, but also for the states. So he says, he says it's going to create upwards of 10,000 jobs annually, and over the next 10 years, it'll generate up to $10 billion in new economic activity and $10 billion in state and local revenue. So I think what's driving it is we're existing under laws that regulate alcohol and the distribution of alcohol and the sale of alcohol that are dating back to Prohibition time. And it's finally time, I think, that we take a step back, and I believe the governor's taking that step and saying, okay, we need to review and overhaul regulations in New Jersey.
So the current New Jersey statute, correct me if I get any of this wrong, it limits breweries to pre-packaged chips and crackers. Organizers of any events have to bring their own food with them and then take it when they leave. Breweries are limited to 25 public events a year and 52 private parties. They're limited in how they can advertise. So how do these restrictions negatively impact craft breweries and their customers?
I think you just listed out everything that, the top list of things that are negatively impacting breweries right now. When I opened up my brewery and made the decision in 2014 to open and then eventually open in 2016, none of these regulations existed. There was legislation that was created back in 2012 that allowed breweries to sell direct to consumers and incorporated a basis to allow for an industry to grow and succeed in New Jersey with purpose. When we talked to the legislators that put that bill in back in the day of 2012, it was purposely written to have a bit of vague language in it to allow the industry to thrive and succeed. So when we think about what's happened over the last 10 years, 10, 11 years, is the regulations have come into place, which are instituted by the ABC to create some clarity in a world that really, when you think about it, didn't need clarification. So they're all impactful, and there's quite a number of them. In fact, the original document was 30 pages long back in 2019 that regulated the behavior.
So if I come to your brewery, can I bring my own food?
You can bring your own food. We can't provide food. I mean, we can provide de minimis snacks, chips, prepackaged foods. We can provide water, but we certainly can't prepare any food on site or offer any food in that manner. Which honestly, I got into brewing because I love creating beer. That's really what my intent is. So we encourage people to bring food. I think it's important that people eat while they're drinking.
Well, that's my next question. Is there a correlation between food consumption and alcohol consumption in terms of, your cognition after, as far as your ability to drive and things like that?
I think you're absolutely right. I'm not going to try to be an expert in this matter, but I tell you there are plenty of studies that exist that talk about eating and drinking and how much you should drink at a rate and what your food intake should be. In fact, it's in the regulations that exist against the breweries right now that the ABC's imposed. They require this item called TIPS training. It's a certification for all employees that they need to be certified under. It's a safety standard, safety behavior for serving. And one of the criteria that TIPS training is, please be sure that while people are drinking, they're eating. So it creates this kind of juxtaposition between what the regulations require for tip certification and what the ABC is asking us to train our employees and what's actually allowed under the regulations.
Well,
So a little bit of conflict in there.
I was reading your organization's website, and it said people are encouraged to bring their pizza, bring a sandwich, and come and enjoy. It's like the opposite of the BYOB with the restaurant, where people they don't have a liquor license, so you can bring it. The person can serve it. Here, you can't serve or cook the food, but I'm welcome to bring it in. Which it's an interesting reversal of that concept.
It's amazing how interesting people get in their creativity of the kinds of food they bring as well, because we offer a large sample room and tables for people to sit and gather, for whatever size group they have, and we've seen everything from cheese platters, meat platters, pizzas, calzones. I mean, people have come and laid an entire meal out to sit and enjoy their beer with the food that they want to pair that beer with, which is it's exactly in the spirit of what's being required and helps us satisfy that tip requirement that people eat while they're drinking.
And today you're sitting, I guess, you're in your manufacturing room, your brewing room, from the background that I see?
Yep.
Okay.
These are all our fermentation. On this side, these are fermentation tanks, and over here is my brew house. So just to give you an idea, the one tank right here, this is one of our, we call it a 60-barrel fermentation tank. It actually holds 15,000 pints of beer. We have 10 tanks in total. We have some a little bit smaller than these. So our total capacity for beer on site in the manufacturing tanks is 120,000 pints of beer at any given day if we chose to fill every tank up to the top.
Wow. Now tell me if this is true. There's a limit on how many TVs you can have in your establishment, the size of the TV, and if certain sports games come on, you need to change the channel immediately. Is that accurate?
You're very correct. So we're limited in our TVs. We're allowed actually 2 TVs on the licensed premise. And the regulation goes as far as to stipulate that the TVs can be no longer than 65 inches corner to corner. So the regulation actually demands that the TVs are at a certain size. If there are more than 2 TVs, the other TVs can only show informational data or presentations about the brewery or about the beer. We use it creatively here at the brewery. We have our menu on one screen. We have 2 other TVs that have a rotating tour, which is part of the requirement. It's a visual tour that our customers can watch, and it shows a history of the brewery. It's a nice little presentation, and I don't mind it. But again, when you start talking about limiting the size of the TVs, it's very cumbersome as a business, because the volume of people we have, it just gets complicated to manage based on the restrictions.
Can you serve soda and water to your non-drinking customers who may be the designated driver or just may choose not to drink but want to be part of the fun?
Yeah, it's an interesting one indeed. So water is allowed. So we do prepackaged water that customers can come in and buy from us so that we could sell to them. The regulation specifically says if it's a soda, we're not allowed to sell it. We're not allowed to sell it to the customers. But if we manufacture it, it's actually not soda. It says soft drink in the regulation. So if it's a prepackaged soft drink, we're not allowed to sell it here at the brewery. However, if we manufacture that on site, then we can sell it. But you can see, I mean, we're not built for making, 15,000 pints of soda and selling that to customers. It's not a reasonable expectation that I could adhere to that. But I think you're touching on the right thing, which is if I'm a designated driver and I bring people out, we want to visit a couple of breweries in a day, and it's a responsible thing to do on behalf of those drinkers, is have somebody designated to take them around. I think it's important that the breweries be allowed to provide a beverage to those designated drivers, allow them to operate safely, and encourage them to do so safely. I think that's where the regulation comes in and restricts in an area that it's hard to understand why.
Yeah, I mean, I, for one, am so many places in a day that I tend not to drink. It just doesn't make sense. It's not worth it. So, having been to events in your premises and similar places, I'll forget and ask for seltzer. And this is just not available to me. And it's usually my beverage of choice, but it's just not an option.
It's not an
And
option. And it goes even further than that. The regulation restricts and says we cannot brew or sell coffee. It's very specific in the language to say that you can't have coffee, which affects, I think there's one brewery in New Jersey and South Jersey that does both coffee and beer on site, and I believe they were grandfathered in. Um, but why coffee specifically? I think everybody thinks of drinking and they think of a cup of coffee at the end of the night before they get on the road and drive. Not unreasonable,
no,
but the ABC has regulated specifically that coffee is not allowed either.
I feel like I'm being singled out. Those are my two drinks. If you eliminate seltzer and you eliminate coffee, I'm out.
Singling out is the right language. I think that a lot of consumers in New Jersey have been singled out for their love for going to a brewery and the things they love doing. I think it's a challenge for us as brewery owners to try to figure out ways to bring consumers in when we're not listening to the voice of the consumer, we're not listening to the voice of the customer here in New Jersey and saying, we're going to provide you a great environment. We're trying our best as a brewery to do that, but under these regulations, our hands are a bit tied.
So, it's interesting that you said that because you're talking about catering to the customer, and of course, you're an in-person type facility. No, you're not bringing beer out, although some breweries do offer packaged goods for sale. You're not necessarily catering to that community. You're catering to people that want to come in and have a certain experience. And you're doing so on the heels of a time that people really couldn't come in based on mandates and fear and concerns about legitimate illness and whether they were susceptible or not susceptible. So now, in an effort to bring that back, can you do things like have musicians on the premises and things like that to help attract people, or does that stack up against your number of days that you can have events, and how does that all work?
You're absolutely right. The ability to have events at a brewery are limited, and there's two key data points in the regulations. The one is the number 25, which is how many events, public events, we're allowed to have over the course of a year at the brewery. So that can be anything from trivia to amplified music to different. Let's say we have a gathering, a group gathering here at the brewery that's more of event-driven fun. And then the other number is 52, which is the number of private events we're allowed to have, which are where a customer can come in and let's say they want to use the brewery for a birthday party, and they want to have a designated area separate from the sample room where they can bring their friends in. We actually have it here at the brewery. The space that I'm sitting in right now is available for private events, and this is the backdrop. And I think that's what people love about coming to the brewery is not only they supporting a local business, they're supporting a local industry, but they actually get to see and enjoy with their friends where the beer is made, where the product is manufactured, and get to talk about it. And our staff loves, when we have private events here, they love telling customers about, hey, this tank does this tank does that. this piece of equipment, cans. That's where the excitement is in coming to a brewery is customers. It's almost like an opportunity to get right in close to something that you love a lot, and see where it's produced. And that's an experience that you don't get at a lot of manufacturing sites in New Jersey. But breweries is that fun place to go where people love to come and hang out. But being limited by those 25 events per year and 52 private events per year, it handcuffs the breweries and what we can offer and what we can bring to customers.
So I got the brakes on, and it's a good time because up until now we kind of been talking about the brewery and what goes on there and what you can and can't do. I want to get into more legislation. So everybody stay tuned. We're going to take a quick 1-minute break and we'll be right back for more Have You Heard with today's guest, Chuck Aaron.
I'm Bob Hocherdle from Kings Road Brewing Company. I'm here to tell you about a brand new show on RVN Television called Cooking with the King. Each week, we're going to taste and sample some of the best beers the Kings Road Brewing Company has to offer. And we're going to talk to area chefs and restaurant owners as we pair our beer with their signature dishes. We're going to teach you how to cook and eat like a king. Cheers.
A stroke can be easy to detect. A loved one can't speak, perhaps they can't move. But there's another sign of a stroke that many of us can't see. It's called spatial neglect, and it can occur during or after a stroke, causing distorted visual movements. Fortunately, there's a solution by using optical prism technology during rehabilitation. If you or a loved one have experienced a stroke, ask your doctor about spatial neglect. Spatial neglect. See the whole picture at KesslerFoundation.org.
Are you?
Welcome back to Have You Heard with Heather Darling and today's guest, Chuck Aaron from Jersey Girl Brewery. So Chuck, when we left off, we were talking about the atmosphere of a brewery, what you can and can't have, what a customer might see. But on the back end that you would see and we wouldn't necessarily know, are there ways in which a craft brewery license is different than a restaurant or a bar liquor license?
Absolutely, Heather. A brewery is not a bar, just at a basic level. And I think there's a lot of confusion because a sample room, when you come to a brewery, looks like a bar because it has a familiar feel, and we create that on purpose so that people feel comfortable hanging out and sitting around. But in a major way, breweries don't offer food. We don't offer spirits. We don't offer wine. Bars are not limited or capped for their events and activities, which breweries are. And what the governor and the ABC have put in place, I think, far exceeds the law, that ambiguity that we were talking about to allow breweries to expand and grow. And so when you think about it, the licenses are completely different. You're talking about a limited brewery license versus a Class C retail license. And the abilities between those two are completely different, especially with regards to how those renewals happen every year.
Chuck, is there a difference in cost between a brewery license and a bar liquor license?
Yeah, absolutely. The price difference exists between all licenses in New Jersey, not between just the bars and the restaurants. You have wineries, you've got distilleries, you've got meaderies that exist along with breweries, and at each one of those there's a very distinct price difference. But again, the brewery's not a bar, so there should be some distinction in those licenses with regards to cost. But also, as a manufacturer versus a bar, we renew our license every year, and a lot of people don't realize that. When I pay for my license every July, I have to renew. Based on my volume, I have a cost of $1,250 for my particular license. I have to renew that every single July and go through a renewal process. The Class C, the retail license, is a one-time buy opportunity. That license exists within a community. 1 per 3,000 residents is how a town issues those licenses. So they are, based on the population, can be quite restrictive within a town, within a very desirable town in New Jersey, because we have a lot of very small towns, especially in North Jersey and along the shoreline. Breweries are not restricted by the population limitation. So there are tremendous opportunities for breweries to expand, but bound by the operations of what a brewery is versus what a bar is.
Chuck, in October, legislation was discussed relating to the codification of potential new rules and regulations for breweries, which would increase the number of events that you could hold. It would allow you to coordinate with food vendors, which I think they do in Pennsylvania. I think they're allowed to have food trucks on the premises, but maybe not food inside. And permitting license holders to have unlimited number of on-premise special events, while also creating something called a farm brewery license, which I'd like you to explain. So what's the status of that legislation? And for mine and our viewers' clarification, what is a farm brewer's license?
Yeah, so I'll start. You kind of started with the farm brewers. There's legislation currently in review right now that would allow farms to produce alcohol for sale at their farm, but the ingredients all have to be sourced within New Jersey. It's brand new legislation that's being reviewed right now. The New Jersey Brewers Guild, which I'm a part of, is reviewing that right now and looking at the opportunities there. We don't have necessarily a position on it yet, but it's quite an interesting opportunity to reinforce what production and brewery in New Jersey happens related to whether it's wine, spirits, or beer. There's a lot of great opportunity there. You did mention Pennsylvania. I'll touch on that. Pennsylvania actually requires you to eat food while you drink. So breweries are required to provide a food option while people drink. It's very different state to state, these regulations that exist.
So the legislation that was talked about in October, are you in favor of that? Is the industry in favor of that or opposed?
Absolutely. You're talking. I think you're talking about it's number 3038, which is being sponsored by Senators Gopal and Greenstein. It's a really nice piece of legislation that will take away the restrictions that are created in the regulations by the ABC and provides the clarity to the ABC of what our state wants our breweries to be able to do. It is a wonderful piece of legislation. The Brewers Guild, Brewers Association are all in support of this legislation. We find ourselves with the governor coming out in the state of the state looking at doing complete alcohol reform, which I think is a very important decision that the governor's made. I think, though, that we as breweries have gotten caught in what is going to be allowed and not allowed, and what legislation will move forward until the regulation or the change of laws in New Jersey with regards to alcohol does actually happen. So we're a little bit concerned, and to be honest, with the timing right now, we're hoping that consumers who have been in great support of breweries over the years continue to support breweries and continue to reach out to the legislators and municipalities to say, please support providing opportunities for breweries to grow in New Jersey.
How exactly does the governor's proposed legislation, as brought up at the State of the State, harm small breweries, craft breweries?
It depends on how it gets put together. There are some key elements to what the governor's proposed. He's proposed to remove this population gap, that requires, 1 per 3,000 for the liquor licenses, which is seen on the liquor license side as devaluing of their license. Mm-hmm. He's looking at keeping local reviews, so the towns will still be issuing the liquor licenses. So he's looking to create new pricing around these updated licenses and create some at least progressive prices based on volume. Mm-hmm. that's brewed at each location or created at each location. It addresses, his goal is to address breweries, distilleries, and wineries all in the same reform, as well as liquor licenses. And in that, he provides a mechanism to support the existing license holders to credit them back over a period of time the value that they put into their licenses, and try to create a happy medium where total liquor reform can happen in New Jersey. Without seeing how that pulls together for the breweries, it's hard to say what the impact is going to be. If we can get the Gopal and Greenstein legislation moved through, then I think we're going to have an opportunity for breweries to continue to grow and flourish in New Jersey, and provide a platform of greater opportunity to see manufacturing of alcoholic beverage in New Jersey grow.
So, I've heard from some bar owners about this, what you just talked about, and for them, that's the equivalent of what happened to the cabs in New York City with the medallions when they started doing Uber and things like that. Those licenses have appreciated over the years to the point that they've become the retirement plan for these individuals, and now all of a sudden they're being devalued, and you get a tax credit, which really is going to kick in after death for somebody that's a small proprietor that's going to run that shop until they're in their 70s. They can't sell it anymore. They can't do anything with it anymore if they want to get their money out, because that credit will go with the license. They're not going to get the benefit, and it's really. For them, it's a shame. So, I mean, I'm glad that you guys don't necessarily have a negative that you're aware of at this point yet, because for them, what I hear, this is going to be devastating. Which state agency oversees regulations pertaining to craft breweries? Is that the ABC, Alcoholic Beverage Commission?
Well, everything that's legislated in New Jersey goes through the legislation process, including the operation and licensing of breweries. It's enforced by the ABC, which reports into the Attorney General's office and ultimately the Governor's office. They're really an enforcement agency. The regulations that have come in, which were started in 2019, if you remember, 2019, 30-page document came out restricting what breweries were allowed to do, and regulate the activities. Public outcry to the Governor's office and the legislators repealed that regulation because of COVID. I mean, we had a lot of reasons why, and the public just didn't support it. The governor took it back and negated it from the ABC. Just last summer, when our license was reissued in July, the ABC, with short notice, made us aware that these regulations were coming back in full force and full effect on the breweries. And this is after 3 years of sitting at the table with the ABC and having great dialogue going back and forth about how does all this coexist in New Jersey. So it was a bit of a shock and a surprise to see that the regulations came out last year after there was a lot of significant discussion with the ABC. But still, in the end, legislative change, the ABC is an enforcing agency. So if the legislators in the state say, this is what breweries can and can't do, the ABC is bound to enforce what the state is ruling through law.
Chuck, does giving craft breweries broader scope on the things we talked about, like menus and non-alcoholic options, events, and things like that, help Main Street districts in New Jersey?
Absolutely. You think of where, we happen to be one of the larger breweries in New Jersey. And we have a warehouse space. You've seen our location.
Yes.
We're off the beaten path. When we moved in to our building, all the buildings around us were empty. We moved in, and within a year, the buildings around us were full, sold, bought, thriving businesses around us. And we're off a beaten path. We're not on a major downtown area or a major thoroughfare. A lot of the small breweries in New Jersey are opening in downtown areas that were impacted or had been impacted over the decades of consumer change, and are starting to revitalize downtown New Jersey in a very positive way. So when you think about, what is the impact of the brewery world, or the opportunity for breweries to exist in New Jersey, so far it's been tremendous. There's so many positive stories about how breweries have gone into towns and they've become destinations for tourism, for economy, for cooperation between businesses. because of the regulations, we can't produce food, but I can certainly put menus out and have food delivered from a local business. That coexistence helps their business. It helps our business, let alone the products that we buy in New Jersey with ingredients, hops, grain. Those opportunities exist in a very positive way for us to help continue to create more and more business in New Jersey.
Chuck, one last question for you. Jersey does seem to have a very large population of individuals who enjoy going to a facility like yours and hanging out with their friends in a relaxed environment and sampling some beer and just kind of making a day of something like that. How can they learn more and help you guys in this fight?
Absolutely. I think that's a great question, and I really appreciate it. So I'm a member of the New Jersey Brewers Guild, and I'm a member of the legislative group of the Brewers Guild. We are a committee that is supporting the bill that's in Assembly right now and working with the Senate to lock in and create those privileges for breweries and put them into statute. So the New Jersey ABC and any future governor can't take away what breweries can do. So if you want to learn more about the issues that are facing breweries right now, you can go and you want to learn more about the legislation. We do have a website. It's brewjersey.beer. So BREWJERSEY.beer. The site allows you to email your legislators on 2 legislative committees and asking them to support the bipartisan legislation that exists in New Jersey to support breweries and expand the privileges allowed at breweries.
Chuck, I want to thank you for coming on today and telling myself, as well as I'm sure many of our viewers, some things that we really wouldn't have any reason to know, but I'm sure it has a great impact on the way a lot of people would like to enjoy their Saturdays and Sundays and some downtime at a facility like yours around the state, and they haven't been able to the fullest extent possible in light of the current regulations. So I wish you the best. I wish the other breweries the best. I would love to have you come back on and discuss this further after the legislation changes and hopefully hear some positive benefits that have been bestowed upon you and the other breweries as well as the people who like to frequent them.
Thank you, Heather. I welcome that opportunity. And on behalf of the 140 breweries in New Jersey, I thank you for allowing me a voice to speak on their behalf.
You're very welcome. And thanks to everyone for tuning in today. We'll see you next week for another episode of Have You Heard with Heather Darling.